such a thing as another world, as people call it, or the other world. It's just that, the word as we use it, other world, is so loaded with preconceptions and stories and legends that it doesn't reflect the fantasy I will be telling you. So maybe you should just call it the meta world, the world before this one, the meta world, where there are our meta selves, our true identities, our meta selves. And the story I came up with was this, that this meta world is very palpable. I'm tempted to even use the word physical. It's very concrete, very real, very palpable. And our meta selves have their lives there. In a way, lives like our own here, at a different level, of course, in a sort of different reality, according to the fantasy again. And then you might ask, well, what is the relationship between the world we normally live in, right, and our meta world, or the other world? What is the relationship between ourselves, as we know ourselves here in daily life, and our meta selves in that other world? How do they relate? So the fantasy is that it's a game. It's a kind of role-playing game in this meta world. Our meta selves, they come together to play this role-playing game, and it is a serious game. Serious in the sense that it has a purpose. It has a meaning. There is a significance to it. It's not purely for fun. It's a role play. It's an exercise that has a meaning, has a telos, a purpose. And the way it works, that's the image I have in my mind, and it's just an image. We need a metaphor to talk about it, so I came up with this metaphor. Our meta selves come together around, let's say, a device. Let's call it the aggregator. I visualize it as a sphere of liquid mercury. Liquid mercury, right? That metal. And the game consists in projecting the thoughts of our meta selves onto that sphere, onto the aggregator. And the role of the aggregator is to receive our projections, our fantasies, our thoughts, the roles we play in the game, and coordinate them together so there is a single coherent reality, a single coherent world, fantasy world, if you will, emerging out of all the individual projections of our meta selves. Do you understand what I mean? Because we have each of our meta selves has its own fantasies, its own projections that it wants to play out, that it wants to exercise in the game for whatever reason, for whatever purpose. But they have to share that game. There has to be a common playing field, a common playing ground, if you will. And that's the role of the aggregator, is to be the receptacle of all those projections, all those fantasies, and coordinate them so a single coherent, integrated reality emerges out of all of that. And the result of this coordination are the laws of physics as we know, right? The laws of physics as we know are probabilistic. They determine envelopes of probabilities. And it is those laws that make sure that there is continuity, there is coherence in this fantasy world we live in, according to this myth. And the degrees of freedom within the envelope of probabilities are what then are explored by the projections of our meta selves. Given the envelope of probabilities, each meta self projects a storyline, a fantasy, a character, something it wants to play in that RPG, in that role-playing game. Our everyday reality is the result of that game, is the result of the integrator doing its job. The material aspects of our reality are just the mercury in that sphere of mercury, which is acquiescent to the thoughts of the meta selves playing the game, taking the shape that corresponds to the fantasies of each meta self. So what we call matter and energy is just that amorphous Mercury taking a certain shape according to the roles and projections that are being put into it by the meta people playing the game. Know what I mean? So our whole universe is actually that Mercury sphere taking on a form, taking on a shape that corresponds to the aggregated, coherent set of fantasies projected onto the sphere. And our perspective in normal life is the perspective from within the sphere. Now, the key thing is to each meta self in this meta reality, the other world, if you will, corresponds more than one person, or more than one entity, conscious entity, as we normally call them. So the meta self playing me is also playing more people. The meta self playing you is also playing more people, maybe even more than people. So each meta self participates in the RPG through multiple projections, through multiple characters, if you will. And all of these characters, although they're completely different, because each one of them mirrors different aspects of the personality of that single meta self that is projecting them all, they all have a sort of a common goal. They all want, from their point of view unconsciously, to tilt the storyline of the game in a certain direction. They all want to play out a certain fantasy, which is the fantasy of their corresponding meta self. Now, another meta self playing another set of characters may have a different fantasy. It's trying to tilt the storyline of the game in a different direction, have other things happen. A third meta self would have a yet different game plan, a different storyline it would like to see. It's trying to tilt the game in yet another direction through its own set of characters. Now, we, in the fantasy, me, you, we are these characters in the game. Our whole universe is actually that Mercury sphere taking on a form, taking on a shape that corresponds to the aggregated, coherent set of fantasies projected onto the sphere. And our perspective in normal life is the perspective from within the sphere. Because when the meta self plays its characters in the game, each character is an aspect of the mind of the meta self that has forgotten who it actually is. So it's an RPG, a role-playing game of full immersion. It is the ultimate virtual reality game, because you truly forget it's a game. Now, because each meta self is playing multiple roles, in the course of our daily lives, we may come across someone who is actually a projection of the same meta self. Right? There are less meta selves, meta players, than there are characters in the game, because each one is playing multiple characters. So, in the fantasy, we are unable to be indifferent in our daily lives to someone who is actually another character of the same meta self. In other words, to someone who is actually another version of ourselves playing the same game. It's impossible for us to be indifferent to such a person. We intuit from within that there is a relationship there and we can't be indifferent. Are you following me? And perhaps the set of characters changes over time. So when a character has played its role and has done what it had to do in the broader context of what the meta self is trying to do in the game, it's discarded. And from the perspective of the game from within, the person passes away. The person dies. And the meta self starts playing another character. Now, from within the game, there has to be continuity, right? in order for the coherence of the game to be maintained. So you have to go through the processes of birth and death, so there is this appearance of continuity from within the game. But it may be sometimes the same meta self changing roles, picking another role that is more useful given his global strategy, his global attempt to tilt the game in the direction he wants to tilt it, to play out his fantasy, his version of what should be happening in the game, while others are trying to tilt it in a different way, and there is this clash, this conflict, which is the very blood, the very lifeline, the very energy that moves the game along. Are you with me? Now, the thing is, we only talked about two realities, right? The meta reality, or the other world, where we have a limited number of meta selves playing the game through a number of different characters, projecting these characters onto this sphere of Mercury that is actually our universe, our 3D universe in linear time. The aggregator making sure that there are these coherence constraints that are obeyed, so the story is coherent, consistent, and continuous. And these different meta selves playing their own agenda, trying to have their own fantasies play out in the game, tilt the game in the direction they want through their multitude of characters. So you only talked about two worlds, this meta world and our world, which is the result of the game. Now the thought is, maybe the meta world is itself the result of a meta game played in a meta reality, where there are even less meta selves. So multiple meta selves in the meta world are actually characters of this meta game of a single meta self. So you can build an entire hierarchy of a game within a game within a game within a game, and at each level in this hierarchy, as you go up in it, there are less players, because in the preceding level the players, multiple players, were actually characters of a single player in the level above. As you go a level above that, multiple players in the level below are actually characters of a single player in the level above, and so on until you get to one player. One meta player. And that ultimate player is actually playing all roles through all levels of reality. In this nested Russian doll hierarchy of meta realities being played out within meta realities as role-playing games. What do you think of the fantasy?